she's like, yeah, I'm going to get back to running. In fact, my goal is by the end of the summer for me to climb the highest mountain in Colorado, which is Mount Albert. This accident happened in April, so it didn't give her a lot of time to get ready for it. But 3 months later, she went back to the doctor. They did an X-ray. The bone had healed. It had bridged, they say, so that wherever the gap was, there was bone tissue forming. And so she was able to get rid of the crutches, and she just started doing a little bit more and a little bit more. And then in August of that year, we're out in Colorado. She, hikes up to the top of Mount Albert, both middle fingers in the air, and says, Dr. So-and-so, you can't tell me what I can and can't do and accomplish.
Welcome back to the Sensei Says podcast, Seïtos. I am Sensei Pascal, back inside my podcast dojo in Saint-Julie, Quebec, Canada, kind of looking like a Burger King employee with my shirt. If you're listening, you've got to log on to my YouTube channel to see my amazing look. I am wearing the Spartan SGX logo on my shirt, and that's linked directly to our guest this week. Before I get into my formal presentation, I just want to remind you my mission here at the SSP, delivering you weekly discussions with successful personalities through which I dig out some actionable advice that will hopefully help you improve your life and mine as well. So on to this week's guest, the amazing Jeff Godin, Dr.J, professor at Fitchburg State University. He also was my teacher / instructor through my Spartan SGX certification process. Spartan SGX is the official training program of Spartan Race. And the conversation led to a deep dive into how to deal with DNFs, failures, how to take the positive out of a loss. I really hope you enjoy the conversation. And if you do, don't forget to hit the bell, subscribe, like, share to a friend, leave a positive review on Apple Podcasts. Don't forget, when we get to 100 reviews on the Apple Podcast machines, I'm giving away a $100 Amazon gift card. On to my conversation with Dr. J.
What have you been up to? And maybe by the same token, maybe introduce yourself for the few people who dare not to know you, sir.
Yeah. So my name is Jeff Godin, and I wear a number of hats. So my main hat that I wear is I'm a professor at Fitchburg State University, and I teach in the exercise and sports science department. And I've been doing that for just a little bit over 20 years now. More recently, kind of related to that, we started up a new concentration in our major in strength and conditioning. So we developed a curriculum that's specific for strength and conditioning coaches, so that our undergraduates can then go off and go to a university and perhaps work with teams there, or professional teams, or maybe even in the commercial setting as well. But we started that up about it was 2018 that we started that. And tied to that, we built out a brand new strength and conditioning facility, here at the university to work with the teams, so we could get the students involved and also take care of the teams at the same time. So as part of that too, I've been doing some, leading some of the workouts for some of the teams, and handling some of the coaching responsibilities. So that's been pretty good and pretty interesting. Let's see, it's my 10-year anniversary with Spartan Race. Kind of got involved with them at the very beginning when Spartan Race first started up. They had a race here in Massachusetts. I had already met Joe DeSena through the Death Race, and I knew Brian Duncanson through, he had a group that he was running adventure races, and I had known Brian through that. And, we connected after the race, and we were talking about, developing a certification for Spartan to train trainers to get people ready for the race. And we had that conversation. And, as part of that, we started up the Spartan SGX, and that evolved into Spartan SGX Level 2. And now here we are, 2021, and we're kind of bouncing around the idea of a Level 3 certification as well. So
cool. Let's
cool
maybe take it a few steps back. So you actually were introduced to Spartan racing through the death race. So I'm guessing you were a participant in the death race or a supervisor there.
Yeah, no, I was a participant. I had just finished the Leadville 100 race, and I thought I was a badass because of it. And I was just looking for harder races, and I came across the death race, and I was like, "Oh no, it's a 24-hour plus race. Sounds like it'll be challenging. I think I'll sign up for it." Yeah, that first year I did it, it was so I think it was 2010 that I did my first one. And I found out that I was grossly underprepared. I found out that I really underestimated the difficulty of the race, not just the physical aspect, but also the mental aspect of it. It really changed my mindset, changed the way I think about myself and the things that I can accomplish. It was a humbling experience. At the end, when I ended up dropping out, I think I made it something like 14 hours, not that long, but I just had enough. And I found Joe DeCenter afterwards, and I said, "Hey, thank you for the great experience. I'm a little disappointed in myself that I wasn't able to finish, but rest assured I'll be back next year." And his first question for me was like, "Are you mad at me?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not mad at you." I'm like, "If anyone I'm mad at, it's myself." He's like, "All right, so that's good, because so far everyone that's dropped out has been mad at me because they thought that it was unfair." And I was like, "Well, it's just you don't know what the expectations are. There's no rhyme or reason to some of the things that we do that we see, but Joe and his crew have a plan." So yeah, so that's how I got involved with Spartan. I'd done it in 2010, and then 2011. And 2011 is when Spartan had their first race in Massachusetts anyway.
Okay, so before you engaged in the death race, because I follow you, I've been following you on IG and social media for a lot of years now, and you're always out there mountaineering and running long distances. And when you said you thought you were a badass, well, I'm confirming that you are, sir, a total badass
Thank you, Coach.
to run these long distance runs. Like we're talking ultras here through trails and mountains. It's amazing, and I'm quite surprised that getting into the death race with your background, you did find it hard. And I was even more surprised to learn that the psychological aspect of the death race is what got you. Because to me, running ultra distances is something of its own. I mean, it's so hard mentally. It can be so repetitive. So for anyone who completes an ultra distance, to me, they're robots. I mean, they're super athletes. So
Feel like a robot sometimes.
I'm guessing so. So how did you get in ultra distances, and what were the particular differences that 10 hours in the death race you went, "Oh crap, this ain't what I expected."
Yeah, sure. Well, the story of how we got into the ultras is it's a long one, but I'll share it with you. Um, it was kind of serendipitously how this all happened. But my wife is more of a runner than I am. I grew up playing mostly anaerobic sports like ice hockey and football and baseball. Never much into running. I just thought running was boring. I thought it was painful. This wasn't my choice of activity. I would run, to be better at my sport. So I would go out and I would run, but it wasn't my favorite thing to do. But my wife, on the other hand, she taught group exercise, and she's been teaching it forever. She would go out and run 5 or 6 miles, 3 days a week. She was out for one of those runs, and one of her friends was driving by, pulled over to the side of the road. Tammy went over and started having a conversation with her. So she was standing on the driver's side window, on the side of the street, and another car came by. The person wasn't paying attention, was looking at a road map or something, and ended up side swiping the car and hitting Tammy in the process. So I was at school, I was teaching, and campus police came into my classroom and they're like, "Hey, professor, we got some bad news for you. Your wife's been in an accident. She's at the hospital. We suggest you go see her right away." So, so I hustle out. I get to the hospital. I get the story of what happened. She ended up breaking her femur. She buckled her pelvis. She had some broken bones in her face. She had a concussion. She had most of her teeth knocked out. They had flown her to the hospital. She was in a pretty difficult situation, but she was going to survive, right? It wasn't everything. She's banged up as she was. The doctor said, she's going to be fine. We can put her back together. And so she was in surgery for, 5 or 6 hours, and she came out of it, everything was, the doctor said she'd be fine and, be able to get back to some of her normal activities. But one of the things that he said to her was that, with your injuries and the broken femur, it's unlikely that you'll be able to continue running the way that you run. And so that kind of stuck with her for a little while. We got home from the hospital and we're hanging out and we're watching a movie. And just out of nowhere, she looks over to me. She says, "Jeff," she says, "the doctor, he said that I probably won't be able to run again." She's like, "Do you think that's true?" And I said, "Tammy," I said, "there isn't anything that you've put your mind to do and to accomplish something. And when you've done that, you've always been able to do it. So if you think that you want to run again, you put your mind to it, I'm sure that you'll be back running." And she took that to heart. She got up, the doctor said as she was able to, put some weight on her leg, with the crutches, the weight bearing activity will help with the bone growth. And so she started putting a little bit more weight on it. She ended up going out for walks on her crutches, putting a little bit of weight on it. Was strict with her physical therapy. She went to every appointment, was doing extra training in the fitness center. Almost 3 months later, she gets rid of the crutches. I said, I need to step back too, because when we're having that discussion about her getting back to running, her final thought was, she's like, "Yeah, I'm going to get back to running. In fact, my goal is by the end of the summer for me to climb the highest mountain in Colorado, which is Mount Albert." This accident happened in April, so it didn't give her a lot of time to get ready for it. But 3 months later, she went back to the doctor. They did an X-ray. The bone had healed. It had bridged, they say, so that wherever the gap was, there was bone tissue forming. And so she was able to get rid of the crutches, and she just started doing a little bit more and a little bit more. And then in August of that year, we're out in Colorado. She, hikes up to the top of Mount Albert, both middle fingers in the air, and says, "Dr. So-and-so, you can't tell me what I can and can't do and can't
Wow.
accomplish." So she did that. And after that day, we're hanging out. And we did another hike that was in Leadville, and we went up to it's called Hope Pass, and we're up at Hope Pass, and we see this runner coming up the trail. And I mean, like I said, I wasn't much of a runner. She would run 6 miles. We enjoyed hiking in the mountains, but seeing somebody running at that altitude was just totally foreign to us. We stop them and say, "Hey, what are you up here running for? Like, we could barely walk up here and you're running." He's like, "Oh, I'm getting ready for the Leadville 100. It's in a few days." He's like, "I'm just checking out the course." We're like, "What's the Leadville 100? And he's like, "Oh, it's a 100-mile race through these mountains." We're like, 100 miles? Like, who runs 100 miles? Like, that's incredible. So we get back from that hike after doing Albert and doing this hike. We go back to our condo and we're just hanging out, chatting. Maybe some beers were included in this, but we started talking about running a marathon. You said, "No, wouldn't it be a great goal to like celebrate your accident and your recovery from the accident by running a marathon, the year after this incident?" And, loved the idea. So we trained up and we did our first marathon on the anniversary of her accident. And from there, it just opened up like both of our eyes. We're like, "Man, I can't believe we just ran a marathon." I never thought I would see myself run a marathon, but I ran one, and I was wondering, what else is possible? So we started doing some triathlons, started with shorter distances, just with a sprint. Then we went up to the Olympic distance. Then we did a half, and then we did a full. And then we're like, oh, wonder if we could do an ultra marathon. And so we trained up for a 50-mile race and did that. And then it ultimately brought us full circle back to the Leadville 100. And it was just this, good things can come out of bad things. And, Tammy's accident, as horrible as it was, it really changed our mindset and our looking, how we looked at things. We ran that first marathon, made us realize that we're stronger than we thought we were, could do a lot more than we think we can, and just kept pushing that envelope until, eventually ran into the stone wall at the death race.
Wow.
And so,
So
go
how
ahead.
much time between Tammy's double fingers on Mount Albert and running your 100-mile race?
Let's see. I have my poster up there. Let's see. It was like a 2 or 3 year process because we did
Wow.
like a couple of years of Ironman, and then we graduated to like the 50-mile and then the 100-mile.
Well, that's quite quick. I mean, you guys were working hard and hustling to get up there.
Yeah, I mean, once we got into it, I said earlier that like I didn't like running initially,
Yeah.
but once I started doing it on a regular basis, it wasn't as painful. I found more enjoyment in it. And I mean, that was our lifestyle. We'd train twice a day on the weekends. We'd spend our entire weekends training, and yeah, it really became our lifestyle.
And how did that first 100-miler go?
It went well, as well as it can go. It's a 50 miles out and 50 miles back. When you get to the 50-mile turnaround, there's a sign on the way out that says you run the first 50 miles with your legs, and then when you come around coming back on the other side of the sign, it says you run the second 50 with your mind.
Mhm.
And that it was totally true. Like, I mean, our bodies were pretty beaten up at that point, but it's just a matter of will, of us just taking, one step at a time, relentless forward progress, and just getting to the finish line. Um, there was one point that in particular that stands out in my mind that was very, very dark, both literally and figuratively. It was about 2:30 in the morning. It was at mile 75. We're both in a very bad spot. I was nauseous. I was toying with the idea of just quitting. Tammy had blisters. They were so bad on her feet that blood was literally seeping through the socks into the shoes. And we had one more big climb to do. And we're in the middle of the climb. She's in pain. Like, I'm feeling nauseous, and like we're just trying to keep going. We know if we can get to the top of this, and then the sun will come up, that our mindset will change, and we're just grinding and really pushing hard to finish it. And there was a mantra that the race director shared with us, and that's, I'm stronger than I think I am. I can do more than I think I can. And I still keep that in the back of my mind, because that's what got us up that climb. Was like I knew that as much pain as we were in, and I was physically defeated, we might feel that if we could just keep ourselves together and get to the top of this, we'd be able to finish. And sure enough, we did. We got to the top. The sun came up, and it was mostly downhill from there. We got to the last aid station just about 10 minutes ahead of the cutoff, and from there it was a flat 13 miles back to the start/finish. And we got there. The cutoff time is 30 hours. We got there in 29 hours and 52 minutes or something like that. So very close to the cutoff. So yeah, it was the first 50 felt great. The second 50, I can't say that. It was a lot of grinding.
Yeah, gets you. And there's a detail in there to which I can relate doing the Agogi a few years ago. You spoke about the sunrise being a factor. And for us, doing the 60 hours plus race, you get to hustle and endure through 2 nights. And both nights, I found personally that it was a positive factor because you're in the deepest of darks. You're tired. Your team's tired. Everyone's got headlamps on. Your body knows that it's nighttime. It wants to just shut down on you, and then the dark, the pitch black dark becomes a dark blue. Now you got like corner of your mouth starts like just smirking a bit, and then the dark blue becomes a little brighter and a little brighter, and then you feel the heat coming back, and you get to see the sun shining a bit, and then you get in the morning and you're a whole other person, and you should be more tired than you were maybe 3 hours ago because technically you've been physically putting your body through physical obstacles and hardships through these 3 hours, but mentally, psychologically, you feel better. So you're saying that the same thing happened to you two while you were running. Like the sunrise is a natural motivator.
It is absolutely, absolutely, and we feel that way about any race that we do. That's an overnighter. That 3 a.m. time is brutal. It's we call them sleep monsters because you're walking or running and you just want to fall asleep. You're looking at a pile of rocks and like, oh, if I could just lay down on that pile of rocks, I would be so comfortable. Um, but then like when that sun comes up, you just wake up, you can, like you said, you feel the warmth of the sun. It's really rejuvenating.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you fast forward 2010, you're on that death race. What did get you at that point?
Yeah, so with all of the endurance training, we sacrificed like a lot of strength training in the process, right? I went from a more of a strength athlete to an endurance athlete, and I really needed to be able to blend the two together. So, for the first 10 hours of that death race, we were carrying these wooden bridges around up and over Joe's Mountain a number of times. We were in groups, and it was a shared responsibility, but I was getting crushed by it. It was, it was on my shoulder. It was crushing my back. We also had to carry buckets with $50 worth of pennies. I forget how much that weighed. So each person had a bucket with $50 worth of pennies in it. Plus we're carrying the bridge, plus all of our other stuff. And so some people are carrying the bridge, some people are carrying extra buckets, and like just like carrying it for that long, I just was not ready for that. I just remember at the end, like I couldn't even extend my elbow. My biceps had just like, spasming to the point that trying to extend my elbow just caused a great deal of pain. And, so it was really that strength training aspect of it that I had kind of dropped and, in preference to get ready for endurance races. And yeah, I kind of regret that a little bit. If I could go back into time and train differently for these ultras, I would include a lot more strength training for it.
And knowing you, I'm sure you've taken that obstacle or that DNF in a positive way. So you just told us what you did learn in terms of physical preparation, but in terms of you as an individual, what did you learn about yourself that you implemented and then got you successful on your next attempt?
Yeah, so my next attempt wasn't successful either. I still haven't finished the death race. So,
Oh, okay.
at this point, yeah, at this point, it's meant like,
Is it
I've
still on the bucket
attempted,
list?
it's still on the bucket list.
All right, all
Um,
right. I'm thinking about it too.
yeah, so it's the physical part of it. I think I can train for it, but it's the mental part of it that I find in the most difficulty with, between just not knowing what to prepare for, thinking that you're finished soon, and only to find out that you're not finished soon, that you still have multiple hours left, and or not even knowing how many more hours you have left. Really end up kind of breaking me down. I think the last one that we did, um, we were out for like 24 hours, and we didn't bring enough food with us, right? And that was, deliberate on the staff's part, was to send us out into the middle of nowhere with just the food that we had. Now they have at the time this year they that we did the race, they had um, like a center place that we could set up like a camp to have extra food and extra clothing if we needed it. And, in the previous races, we had gone back to that a number of times. And I was anticipating that we would be doing the same. Well, we didn't. And we didn't have enough food. So we're out there for 24 hours, without any food, and started to, feel nauseous because of that. And then we jumped up the intensity of it. But anyway, it all boils down to, it just broke me down mentally, and to the point that I was like, you know what, I can't continue. And then as soon as you get some food in your stomach and you get a little bit of rest in you, you're like, oh man, like you gave up way too early. So one thing that like this process has changed for me is that I still this, I don't always finish my ultra marathons either. I've dropped out of some of those, but I always like ask myself, like, is this necessary? Are you dropping out for the right reasons? Are you going to be okay if you drop out, with yourself? Are you going to beat yourself up because you dropped out? Or are you going to be okay with it? And having Tammy there too, we bounce these questions off of each other. It's not just like it's going through in my mind. I might say to Tammy, I'm not feeling that great. I think I'm going to call it a day. And then she'll run me through the questions and make sure that that's what I really want to do, and if it's really necessary, if I'm just being weak in the moment.
Wow. And I think that's such a good message to put out, because a lot of us that are especially hard on ourselves and push ourselves through all of these really tough challenges, we oftentimes have a hard time dealing with DNFs and failures. And it's got a way to touch us deeply in our egos, in our sense of self-worth. And then you try to like, for some of us, you're going to spend maybe a couple of days like on Agendaz and crying about it a bit. And then you're going to try to figure out the positive that can come out of that, what you can learn, what betterment you could implement, or improvement you should focus on right away to crush the next one. um, how do you deal emotionally with those DNFs? Because that info, I think, is going to help a lot of people watching or listening right now.
Yeah, I don't beat myself up over it, because I go through the process in the moment of that. You know what, this is okay. I'm dropping out. I'm going to accept this. Um, you know, and then when I get home, I go back to the drawing board and I look at like my goals, like, what went wrong? Was it my goals? Did I set my goals too high? Are they outside of my reach? Usually I conclude, no, my goals are good. They're meant to be high. The bar is meant to be high. If I set my goals at a level that I'm not certain that I'm going to accomplish them, right? I do these things not because I know I can. I do them because I'm pretty certain that I can't, and it's going to take a lot of effort, and that effort put in the right direction in order for me to accomplish them. So I look at the goals first, and I'm like, you know what, the goal's good. It's okay. It's not the goal. Then I look at the process, my training, and I think about my training, leading up to it, the training, the year before. And, did I do all of my workouts? Did I not do well because I skipped the session here? I skipped the session there. Um, so I look at the plan, and sometimes there's tweaks that I can make in the plan, but it usually comes down to the third point, and that's my commitment. Like, did I commit fully to meet this goal and do everything I could possible to accomplish this goal? Like, knowing that I set the bar high for myself. Did I really, hold myself accountable to doing the work necessary? And that's usually where I kind of fail, is if I look at my commitment, it's like, you know what? There were a few times that like I prioritized other things ahead of this. I could have eaten a little bit better. I could have, so it usually comes down to that commitment where, like, to accomplish these big goals, like it's really going to take full on commitment where you're making more sacrifices than I was willing to make.
Dr. J, this has been such a pleasure talking to you, sir. Just that story at the beginning was well worth this Zoom talk, truly inspirational. I thank you again for the time, taking the time on your busy schedule to talk with me and having some deep wisdom and value messages for our audience and those watching on YouTube. What's your next challenge for you and Tammy?
Yeah, so we have a race out in Ouray, Colorado that I feel like I've always been talking about is my DNFs, but this is one that we've DNF'd 3 times. Not giving up on it. It's all of it's at high altitude. It's above 10,000 feet, has 40,000 feet of elevation gain. It's 100 miles, and it's never nice weather. It's at some point in time, there's going to be a thunderstorm that rolls in that's going to bring sleet, hail. It's going to be cold. It's going to be hot. It's a brutal test of endurance, and we haven't finished it yet. So that's our next bet is
And that's
to
what
go back and
that's what
finish
makes
that.
you a badass. I mean, you just never give up, and that's so inspirational because to me, it's not how many times you win, but it's how many times you lose and get up to win in the future. So again, thank you for the inspiration. You two are truly, I think, the most badass of couples out there. And I hope we get to do a trail someday or a race together. That would be such a blast.
No, well, thank you so much for having me on, Coach. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I should sign up for one of your races sometime soon.
So I guess the challenge is official, Dr. J. Next year, Alpha 003 from Warrior Endurance here in Montreal. We're waiting for you. Please join in on the fun. Hope you can make it. For now, we'll revisit what we've learned from you in terms of dealing with DNFs and failures. Number 1, overreaching. Try to set yourself objectives that are attainable, realistic. At the same time, they have to be just that hard. You know, not too simple, not too complex or too hard, but in that sweet spot, that gray area where in which you feel motivated to push yourself harder, learn new things. That sweet spot where you fear your objective, where you dread it in a way, but that fear is also motivation. Not fearing that you're going to fail per se, but fearing the unknown. When you feel that it's going to be hard, I fear it because it's unknown to me yet, but at the same time, I feel an appeal to do that kind of stuff. Well, that's the sweet spot you're looking for. And through empirism, you're gonna grow like a sort of wisdom through which you're gonna set yourself the right goal, the right difficulty level. So not too simple, not too hard, but in that sweet spot in which you get the most human growth. Number 2, process. That's post-event when you're trying to figure out what went wrong. Try to analyze like every aspect of your preparation. Might be the training itself, might be the gear that you thought would be correct for the event, but like not wearing the right type of socks for an endurance event. That's a super simple example, but those of us who made the mistake of wearing cotton socks, we know what we're talking about. So you've got all blisters in the world, and oftentimes they're too painful and you DNF just because of that, and that could be super frustrating. But lesson learned, you know now that you need to go towards synthetic socks instead of cotton. Could be the elements that you had to learn in preparation for your adventure race. Say you had to do some land nav but did not study properly, and come race day you couldn't find the right path or the right point on a map to orient yourself properly, and you lost 3 hours to get to the cutoff, and obviously you didn't make it in time, and that explains your DNF. So all of those elements that you can pinpoint and then improve on for the next event, so that event per event, DNF per DNF, and even with your successes, your preparation becomes rock solid. Number 3, commitment. And it goes as simple as, how bad do you want it? How much do you really desire it? Are you willing to sacrifice to attain success? It's as simple as that. If you want to get a gold medal at the Olympics, right now, there's someone out there in the world who's working harder than you. So if your desire is to be number one, work like a number one. And I will refer here to one of my models in life, GSP George St. Pierre, who's dealing with a OCD condition daily, but he learned a way to turn that into his advantage. And I remember, I think it was for his Nick Diaz fight, that he had to improve on his boxing skills. So he hired Freddie Roach as a coach. And he couldn't nail a combination like the evening of his training with Freddie Roach. He spent the whole night, I think he did not even sleep, the whole night practicing that combination. And come the next training, he was the one who had the best combo in the class during his training with Coach Roach. That's how dedicated and obsessed with being the best that he was. Like I said, you have to sacrifice. Doesn't mean that you have also the time to go out with your friends, play your Xbox if you're committed to your goal. I'm sure you're going to be successful. But again, how much are you willing to sacrifice, and how much does this goal mean to you? Now it's your turn, Seïtos. I want to hear from you. How do you deal with your failure? What's the positive that you gain from them? Please leave it in the comments or drop me a line on my social media at Sensei Says Pod or at Sensei Pascal. If you need to take some notes about what we've discussed with Dr. J, don't forget that all of these pieces of advice are available in the show descriptions and in the episode notes as well. You want to get the episodes fast and first? Sign up to my free weekly newsletter, will ya? You like what you've heard today or seen on the YouTube machines? Don't forget to hit the bell, like, subscribe, share to a friend, leave a positive review, please, on Apple Podcast. When we get to 100 reviews, I'm giving away a $100 Amazon gift card. If you feel pumped, you want to conquer the world, number one, go through my archives. We've got a plurality of other inspirational episodes to listen to or watch. On that note, thank you for watching or listening. Seïtos, you are dismissed. See you next week.
In every fabric of my soul, I wanted to quit, man. I wanted to just lay down and either fall asleep or just turn around and go back, because that was the easy choice.
I couldn't think of a better way to spend New Year's Eve in Las Vegas than being face down in a puddle of mud doing push-ups with 15 total strangers. So I did that.
You go.